Good evening, Santa Paula. Welcome to this forum brought to you by the League of Women Voters and the Santa Paula Chamber of Commerce. Tonight, we're going to hear from the 4 candidates who are running for Santa Paula City Council. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce the board chair of the Santa Paula Chamber of Commerce, Ned Branch. And Ned will go ahead and unmute you and get started.
Well, good evening and welcome to this City Council Candidates Forum. The Chamber believes voters who are well informed make the best choices in an election. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to David Marin and the League of Women Voters who are co-sponsoring this forum.
Thank you, Ned. At this time, I'd like to introduce the president of the League of Women Voters of Ventura County, Betsy Patterson.
Good evening. I'm happy to welcome you on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Ventura County. And I'm joined tonight by our mascot, Harry T. Byrne, the voter bear. Henry actually is his formal name. Henry and I visited the ballot drop box outside the entrance to the City Hall in Santa Paula, so we would know where the drop box is. I hope you all do too. It should be available shortly to receive ballots because the county clerk recorder started sending out ballots on Friday, October 2nd. Henry is named after a young Tennessee state legislator who, after receiving a letter from his mother, changed his nay vote to yay, allowing Tennessee to become the 35th state to ratify the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. That was 100 years ago, and it granted women across our nation the right to vote. The League of Women Voters was established then in 1920 with the mission of encouraging civic engagement, which includes signing up new voters, educating voters about the candidates and the issues, and encouraging all citizens to vote. We hold the right to vote precious since, as we know, not all people were given that right in the original Constitution. The League is a nonpartisan political organization. We do not support or oppose any candidate or any political party. We do, however, support or oppose ballot propositions based on positions we have developed over the past 100 years. Each of us has a voice in our government, but only if we use our vote. To be informed voters, we must ask questions of the candidates and understand the pros and cons of the ballot propositions before we cast our vote. This is your opportunity as voters to learn about the candidates and where they stand on issues important to you. Harry T. Byrne and I want to thank you for joining us tonight, and we hope many of your questions are answered by the candidates, and be sure to make a plan to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we will go ahead and get started with our program. We randomly drew straws earlier in a sense, so to decide the order, we have 4 candidates, and our first candidate tonight is Margot Bangs. Margot, when you're ready, you have 1.5 minutes.
Well, thank you everybody for being here and for putting this on. I agree that it's incredibly important that our voters are informed, and COVID has certainly created some challenges as far as campaigning and getting the word out. So my name is Margot Banks. I'm running for City Council. I am a former small business owner here in Santa Paula. I also served a term on the Planning Commission. I decided to run because I believe that we need more progressive representation in Santa Paula. We need people who are going to look to include everybody in our town. This year has shown us that we need to take care of our people first. It's shown us that this is the time for racial justice. We can't wait another minute. And it's shown us that we're all connected way more than we knew before. So I think we need to have a new vision for what our city looks like, for what we invest in and what we prioritize. And I think the best way to do that is to build from the ground up, to protect our working people in town and to invest in their needs. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Caitlyn Behringer. When you're ready, Caitlyn, 1.5 minutes.
Good evening. As a third-generation lifelong resident of Santa Paula, where community comes first, I'm running for City Council. I want to be the next generation of leadership in this community and empower others to do the same. I have a master's in public administration from CSUN, and I'm a graduate of the Ventura County Leadership Academy, which connects people and issues to strengthen this community. I currently sit on the Measure T Commission, a 1-cent sales tax. passed in 2016 that helps fund police, youth, and road projects in the city. I also have worked in the nonprofit sector for over 5 years and currently work in fund development for Kids and Families Together, a nonprofit that provides therapy and support services for kinship, adoption, foster, and at-risk families in our county. As a fund development manager, I have worked with budgets, written grants, helped with RFPs, and raised millions of dollars in my career. My goal for Santa Paula includes maintaining and expanding current economic development strategies, expanding youth programs, creating and growing social and mental health services, continuing street improvements, and supporting police and public safety. I've already participated in a ride-along with SPPD and had several meetings with council members, city staff, Ventura Behavioral Health, Public Health, Partnerships for Safe Families, and Santa Paula Chamber of Commerce, to name a few. I'm working towards a social service coalition in town and mental health services in our parks during COVID, and the young professional group. Santa Paula is a great place to live, and I know that the time for me to serve on City Council is now. This position will give me the opportunity to help shape the future for this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlyn. And next up, we'll hear from Andy Sobel.
Thank you very much, David, League and fellow candidates, and mostly all the people who are being civically involved right now and listening or watching on Channel 10. We're all here because we want good leadership for the city that engages the public and works together to make tough decisions. Just a little bit about me. There's kind of 5 parts of my life that have helped me make me a pretty good council member. I'm born and raised in Mexico City, so I'm bicultural and bilingual. And I'm always excited about living in a town like Santa Paula because I feel very at home here. I'm a software engineer and a systems analyst, so I'm comfortable with technology and customer service. I was an inner city primary level bilingual teacher in several cities, so I'm comfortable with diversity and some adversity as well. I have a PhD in educational administration, looking at policy, which involved a lot of self-learning and wrestling with ideas, which I do every day as a council member. I was a community organizer. I've worked on issues from the neighborhood, city, state, and up to the federal levels. And finally, I've been your council member for the past 2 years now. And before that, I was on the Measure T Oversight Committee for 2 years. And for 2 years, just to be a good resident, I attended every council meeting. A lot of times I was the only non-staffer there. In general, I have a lot of objectives, but in general, I want to make sure I continue to represent every single Santa Paulan all across the city. I want to make sure that our deliberations at council and decisions are transparent and open.
Thank you, Andy. We're going to have to stop you there. Okay, our next candidate is Leslie Cornell.
Yes, thanks. And thank you to the Chamber and League of Women Voters for hosting this tonight. It's so hard to campaign and get the word out. It's just great to have a way to reach out to people this way, and also watching the video later. I was inspired at first to have a few prepared remarks, but I thought when Betsy was mentioning the 100 years of the women's vote, it reminded me that my grandmother ran for office 90 years ago, 10 years after the women got the vote. So I'm very proud of that, to carry on in that tradition of strong women in my family. I have worked and volunteered in Santa Paula for 35 years. I've owned Santa Paula Travel since 1988. I have been on numerous boards. I was a founding director of Santa Clara Valley Bank. I worked and was a member of the Seroptimus for 15 years. I was a board member for 4 years for the Police and Fire Foundation, Santa Paula Police and Fire Foundation, and worked very hard with Moonlight at the Ranch to raise funds for our police and fire. So that's a very strong and important part of my campaign. And I do it all because I am just a busy person. I love working at the travel agency, taking care of my clients here in town, and then the rest with family and kids. So thank you.
Thank you. We're going to begin with our first question. We'll go to Andy. And Andy, the question is about marijuana dispensaries. Where do you stand on dispensaries in Santa Paula? And would you attempt to overturn what I assume is a current ban on dispensaries in town? So share with us your positions and why.
Yes, so of course, last year we brought this to council, And we had several nights of deliberations and a lot of community input. And when we had the vote, there was 4 council members against and 1 person in favor of it, and that was me. And I gave a long, several long reasonings to why I was making that vote. The primary concern that a lot of people have is about youth, and I shared that. That's my primary concern as well. But I'm much more comfortable having something that we can control versus having something that the black market controls. Second, as many cities like Port Hueneme and Oxnard have done, the cannabis industry is willing to give away 1% of their profits. So in Oxnard, those 1% are going to a lot of nonprofit organizations. In Oxnard, they're going to take 1% and put it into small business development. I'm thinking some of that we can do here, but as well put it into strong anti-drug, anti-alcohol, anti-nicotine, and mental health for our youth. So I'm thinking that, and as long as, and the revenue will help now to pave streets. So I am hoping that it comes back before council, and if the arguments are strong, I will support it again. Thank you.
Thank you. Margot, same question to you. Where do you stand on dispensaries? Do you think the ban should be overturned?
Yeah, I do think it should be overturned. I am for dispensaries. I'm also for considering the cultivation of cannabis, of both marijuana as well as the non-intoxicating hemp. I think these are things that we should consider as a town who doesn't have a lot of revenue. I think this is a major opportunity for an economic boost. Like Mr. Sobel said, we can leverage these businesses to put some money back into our community on top of the revenue that we make from it. I think that we also need to be really proactive in taking a restorative justice approach and trying to get these businesses to hire people who've been formerly incarcerated due to marijuana. And I think that we should go even a step further and try to be pushing the county to reflect on people who are still incarcerated and trying to get those records expunged. So I think that this could be really good for our community. I think the best thing that we can do is, like Andy said, be in control of it. And a vote against having cannabis sales legally is a vote for the black market, which is going to be there and people are going to have access whether we control it or not. I think it's better to have it in our hands.
Thank you. Same question to you, Leslie. Where do you stand on dispensaries and the ban?
I would agree that the marijuana is already in town. It's something to be dealt with. And I know that it does have medical benefits, and there are numerous ways where marijuana can help. But I would hate and would be reluctant to hang our budget on the dispensaries. And I would need to work very closely with families and law enforcement to make sure that we're not handing them more problems to take care of. That being said, perhaps as a last resort to make ends meet, to make sure that we have the funds we needed, it is worth considering. I will never say no to anything. I will always want to see all arguments from both sides, but I would not want to base our city budget on that and use that as a major source of revenue. I see, for example, in Port Hueneme, they're just raking in the money like crazy, but they won't once Oxnard opens all their dispensaries. And so we'll have to wait and see where that settles out as to the true financial benefits. But again, I'm reluctant to use that as a basis for our budget, and I would prefer to find other ways to, in addition or instead of, to create a larger tax base for our city.
Thank you. Caitlyn, please share your thoughts about dispensaries and the ban.
Fantastic. Personally, I see the medicinal benefits to cannabis, and I know COVID has impacted our budget in massive ways, especially with our current sales tax. And we're just learning the ramifications of this global pandemic. So I honestly would be open to revisiting the dispensary idea. You'll find that in Santa Paula, about 75% of the residents are in favor of medicinal use, and we're about 50-50 on dispensaries. So I think it's definitely something we'd have to get the residents buy-in on. But when you look at the Port Hueneme model, they actually have a 1% tax that goes back to REACH and goes right back to the community. They've seen a reduction in crime in their community. The police have 24 access to the dispensaries. So I would have to say that I think it would be something to look into, but I definitely think it's something that we need the buy-in of the residents and to hear what the residents of Santa Paula think about it as well. I definitely see the positive sides of the tax benefits though. Thank you.
Thank you. And candidates, will you remind me, are there 2 open seats or 3 for council? 2? 2. Okay, thank you. So for the audience, you'll be voting for 2 of these candidates in this November 3rd election. We're going to start the next question, and Caitlyn, we're going to go ahead and start with you on this one. And the question is, share with us your vision for the economic development of the city of Santa Paula. What kind of businesses and services do you think we need?
Fantastic. So in Santa Paula, we've been known to pass up on some good opportunities for business like Patagonia in our city and the helicopter pad. So I think we need to look at working with businesses and businesses of all sizes and varieties. I think we need to look at recruiting businesses where people can make a living wage here and where they can afford to live here. I think we also need to look at our youth and our education center. I think it would be great to see an education center in this community, a trade school, places where our children can learn. I think that all has an economic impact on our city as a whole. When we have our youth that are able to have high-paying jobs or well-paying jobs to be able to sustain their family here. So I think it's feeding into the next generation of leadership in this community. I think it's helping our current businesses sustain where they're at. I think it's bringing in new businesses. I think we all rise together in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie, same question to you. What's your vision for the economic development of Santa Paula? What kind of businesses do you think need to be brought into Santa Paula?
Well, being a small business owner, David, I've got more than 30 years experience in serving a community and service. And I just see a real need for that. Sales tax-based businesses should be recruited because, again, with the COVID, with all the issues that we've had stemming actually from the Great Recession starting in 2008, we've been struggling ever since. And so we really need a greater tax base. The city has potential. We have a lot of young people and young families moving in because we are more affordable than many places in the county. So that's encouraging. But we want to create a wonderful way of life for them and improve the services so that they want to stay long term. And one thing I really want to do is work with the city to make sure that we have a facilitator that is going to make it easy for people to open businesses and get their permits quickly. It really should be the priority so that we can get new businesses in, restaurants, boutiques, recruit a business that would go in the Kmart lot. It's just a wasteland there that could be a source of sales tax for us, and which we could use to improve all services for the city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Margot, same question to you. What is your view about development and what kind of businesses and services does Santa Paula need?
Well, my perspective on economic development is really that it's about the people. It doesn't matter how many great new businesses we get in town if we don't have a population of people who can afford to dine and shop and pay for the services that these businesses offer. So I think that we have to have a side-by-side effort of bringing great jobs to Santa Paula, well-paying jobs. I think that we have to make sure that the businesses that we are bringing in aren't just taking from our community, but they're giving back in the form of wages and benefits. And I think that we have to keep city jobs local. In addition, I agree the education center, the possible university center could be a major asset. The Santa Clara Valley together has been working on this project that could be so incredible for Santa Paula and could provide job training as well as good education. And it kind of could create a great cycle in Santa Paula here of economic development where we build up our working class and then businesses are going to want to come here. We're not going to have to sacrifice and negotiate things in order to get people to come here. We'll be able to set the terms for which businesses get to be in Santa Paula.
Thank you. Andy, we'll wrap up with you.
There you go. Thank you. So yeah, this town has had kind of a bad reputation in the past in terms of helping businesses come in. I think we turned a corner on that. Our current uh, uh, office is doing permitting much more efficiently and much more quickly. And we need to be much more intentional about it. We've been very passive and just waiting for people to come, so we need to do outreach and marketing. So one of the things that we recently did is we renamed our community development department to community and economic development, just to emphasize that economic development is a priority. We need to support our existing businesses, but we also need to be very strategic in bringing in small and large businesses that help our tax base or hire our people. We're working very closely with the chamber, which is great. And John Marquez is doing a good job of getting all the businesses in relationship with each other. We've got a high-speed internet. We're the first gigabit city in the county, so we need to get that in our whole city. We have a BID in place downtown, which is fantastic. But I'd like to get us do small business sectors, get small meeting groups, and have them become evangelists to invite other business into town here. So I think we've got a lot of opportunity here. We just need to get the word out. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have several questions, candidates. I'll combine them, but Leslie, you'll be up first. So the questions are all around affordable homes, affordable housing. What can we do to address the issues? So share with us your specific ideas, Leslie, about affordable housing and what you think are the right mix. I mean, do you believe in more apartments, more senior housing, rental housing? Share with us as best you can your specific plans for affordable housing.
Well, specifically in Santa Paula, with our roughly 5 square miles, we don't have a lot of acreage to develop. And we want to respect the green space. And so that leaves us with, it's a difficult problem to solve, a puzzle to solve, to make sure that we have enough housing for seniors, for low income, for the middle range, so that we have a fine balance of housing offered to everyone. So I know we have government mandates that require a certain number of low income housing. I understand that even some of our low income housing at this time even has openings, and we're recruiting people from other cities. So we may have, aside from whatever is mandated to us, we may have close to enough for that. But my priority is to bring in jobs so that people can afford to live here, and good paying jobs. And so we really need to work on that, so that we can create a quality of life so that everyone has work here and is able to afford to buy the homes that we have here. And that's a real priority for me on all levels, from low income to seniors to middle high. I think a city always needs a good balance of housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Caitlyn, same question to you. As far as your thoughts on housing, what type of housing do we need as far as rentals or seniors? And what will you really do to solve the problem of housing in Santa Paula?
Great, thank you. We all know housing costs in California are out of control. We all know that some of our families here are doubled and tripled up in our city, living in homes. So I think we really have to be new and innovative in these solutions for affordable housing, and how we use our developer impact fees and the strategies that we use with those. In the Ventura County Leadership Academy, we were actually introduced to a new concept, or a concept called housing trusts, where the trust buys land and then you build the houses on, and people actually own the houses on top of the land. So it decreases costs, and it's just a really cool thing. And so it would be interesting to see how that could play out here in Santa Paula, as well as making sure, another area I want to stress is I really want to make sure that our houses here in the community are not segregated. I want affordable housing to be mixed in with the regular community. I want it all to be one part of the community. I don't want it to be one section or the other. So making sure that not only all income levels and all families thrive in this community, but making sure that we're one unified community with affordable housing and housing our most needy. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Margot, what are your positions about affordable housing? What are your plans? What do you think is the right mix of housing?
Yeah, I think that we are well past our share of $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 houses. There are not many people in Santa Paula that can afford that. And all you have to do is go drive around the new neighborhoods to see that most of those people are from Santa Clarita, from the Valley. They're not residents of Santa Paula that are going and buying those houses. So we have to focus on affordable housing. The state subsidized affordable housing, as well as making our market more attainable. When you look at the numbers of what our regional housing needs are, they discuss our moderate income level. Our moderate income level in Santa Paula is around $50,000. Any financial person would tell you you shouldn't spend more than a third of your income on your mortgage. So for a $50,000 income, that's about $1,250 a month. These are families that are not going to be putting 20% down. So that is a house that is about $200,000 for the house. So just to say how absolutely unattainable housing is for most of our community here. We need to increase our density. We need to make sure that we are building in these price points that are actually attainable for the families that live here, and not developing to try to attract people from out of town, because COVID is going to have a major impact on this housing crisis, and we're only going to see more increases in our homeless population if we don't really fight for this. And it's important that the people on our council take this as a serious crisis.
Thank you. Andy, we'll wrap up with you about your positions on affordable housing, what type of housing you believe is best, and what are your plans to increase housing?
Thank you. So, yeah, as everybody's mentioned, housing and especially affordable housing is one of our biggest challenges. We're in the middle of working on our housing element as part of our general plan. That'll be done in the spring. And we need to make sure we have a housing stock at all levels. So we're talking about, affordability for low income and fixed income people, but also our workforce people, our teachers, our police. So it goes across the board. And as was mentioned, generally you're supposed to spend 30% of your income, but we have 47% of our residents are renters. And the households that 50% of households have higher than 30% of their money. So they're spending much more money than they should for rentals. So as Margot mentioned, we're in the middle of trying to meet our regional housing needs assessment numbers, RHNA. We're doing pretty good at the high end, and that's part of the equation because you need a little bit of everything. And we've become the first city in the county to make it more straightforward to build in commercial areas. Plus, we've just changed our plan to allow more density in higher buildings. So I think we're going to hit our numbers fairly. I'm confident about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Margot, we're going to start with you on the next question. So let's take a step back and just learn a little bit more about you. So Margot, tell us why you're running, what made you decide to run, and what do you think distinguishes you from your other candidates or the other opponents? Or what sets you apart?
Well, I decided to run, kind of like I said in my intro, because this year has brought to light so much of what we need to do that we're not doing, which is to care for our community. I grew up with a father who was always very active in campaigns. He was an activist. I heard stories of him attending the Million Man March. And I grew up with a mother who is the most loving and nurturing person I've ever met. So I have both of those things in me. And I know that the best way to care for people is through policy, is through our city fighting for the needs of the working people. I think that what sets me apart is that I'm not running because I have career aspirations. I am not running for any personal political gain or anything like that. I am running purely because I'm worried about our community. I'm worried about the growing economic divide. And I want to make sure that there's representation in our city council for all of the people in Santa Paula, not just the business class, not just the affluent, but all of the people in Santa Paula. That is truly what motivated me to run. And I hope that I get the chance to do that.
Thank you. Caitlyn, why are you running? What do you think sets you apart?
One of the reasons why I decided to run was actually graduating from the Ventura County Leadership Academy. And I got to know a lot about our county on a macro level. And I found out for the first time we're at a negative population. And for the second year in the city of Santa Paula, we are a negative population. And we've been in a recession. And so I didn't feel like I could fix the problem on a macro level but I felt like I could be more engaged in my community on a smaller level. And with my master's in public policy, with my love for policy, with my love for this community, with my love for every single resident in this community, I really felt like I could run and do really good on the council. I feel like I can represent all voices and really unify this city and start addressing some of the issues, some of the policies from the past and policies for the future. And I'm just excited to be at the table. I'm excited to be that next generation, that voice of change in this community, and to see others come behind me that are young and passionate and have love for this city just like I do. So thank you.
Okay. Andy, why are you running for the council? What do you think sets you apart?
Well, 2 years ago when I ran, I was talking about how unique Santa Paula is. And then once you're a candidate and you get to talk to thousands of people literally, you realize that it is a unique city and I love this city. And I love that every single person I meet is just unique and interesting. So we're this great diverse population. And they love it too. So even the people who are, raise a lot of concerns and issues, when you sit down and talk to them over a cup of coffee, you find out that everybody just loves it here. I've met about 40 different people who've moved here in the last 2 years, and they moved here because they wanted to. So I just want to be a good public servant to keep that going. I think the skills that I bring help me on city council. I'm like others, I have no particular agenda. I just want to be the best public servant that I can and represent every single Santa Paulan on here. And also I'm running for another 4 years because 2 years ago things were, there was a lot of cynicism in town, but I'm finding that people are much more confident that we're moving in a good direction. They like our city government. They like the things that we're getting done. And I just want to be part of that for another 4 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Leslie, we'll wrap up with you. Why are you running and what do you think sets you apart?
Well, I've been working in my small business since 1988 in town. As a travel agent, you talk to everybody. You talk to the business owners. You talk to the people flying home after working in the farm labor, going back to Morelia and Puruandiro. And the fact that I'm bilingual, I was a Spanish major in college. I'm able to communicate with everyone. And I feel like I break stereotypes when people come into my office, and I treat them with respect and able to communicate with them in the language in which they're most comfortable. So that's one thing that has enabled me to communicate with everyone in the city. Again, business, funerals, weddings, destination weddings, cruises. I've taken care of this community for over 30 years, and I feel that again, I have also a diverse background in that I'm married to a Latin American immigrant, and my whole family is, if you look at my Facebook, we've got quite an interesting and diverse family that I love, and I carry that with me to how I care about my city. And I would like very much to make sure that we include everyone in the discussions of our decisions that we make in our city. So I bring that by experience, love of the city, and the ability to communicate with all.
Thank you. Andy, we're going to start the next question with you. This is educational issue, normally not the purview of the city, but of course in Santa Paula, everybody collaborates. So what will you do to advocate for an educational center in partnership with the college district, the county, and Santa Paula Unified School District? Are there particular things you would want to see in a center? What do you think the city's role should be in developing a center? Sorry, we still have you muted, Andy. Let's try that again if you could unmute. There we go. One more time. There you go.
I think we got it. Thanks. So yeah, what's going on with the school district keeps me up at night. As has been mentioned, we're losing families with school-age children, so their budget is severely in deficit. That's a big problem for us. So we've got to make sure that we're partnering with them to get families to move here and make sure that the schools are the best that they can be. So moving up the pipeline, we certainly want to work with Limonera, where a piece of property is available to get a community or a college center there. I've been working on that for the last few years. I just want to make sure it never falls off the table. So we've got to keep the pressure on. And on top of being a top flight college center, I think we can also bring some other learning and training centers in there, so we have just a hub of learning. There's talk about possible nurses school, a sheriff's academy, labor apprentices shops. So I think that could be a learning center where all sorts of people are coming along with the college center. But we've got to make sure it's a top priority, because if we stop talking about it, it's not going to happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Margot, same question. What do you think should be the city's role in working with other partners to bring in an educational center?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the city has to fight really hard for this. I think that we can put more pressure on the county to get kind of the assets that we were promised long ago, because this could be a game changer for Santa Paula, truly. It could change the economic landscape of Santa Paula. It could help many of our residents get jobs, get a better education. I also think that we need to, within our community, fight on so many levels to encourage our residents to stay local. And I think that education is a large part of that. When I first moved to Santa Paula 4 years ago, I was not a parent, but every single person that I talked to said, what about the schools? The schools are terrible. And I think the big problem is that so many parents who have resources and are affluent send their kids outside of Santa Paula to get an education. And so that leaves our schools struggling, and that leaves the rest of our families struggling because our schools don't get the resources that they need. So I think that the city can really advocate for our educational system that we currently have, try to fight for parents to stay here and to keep their kids in our schools, and fight for the educational center as well, so that as our youth is growing up and getting ready to come out into the real world, they have options close to home, because driving out of town is always a barrier. And if we had something here, I just think it would be really, really great.
Thank you. Leslie, same question. What will you do to help advocate for an educational center? What do you think is the city's proper role?
Two things, actually. One is, it has been mentioned, our city voted for the bond that would bring the community college to our community, and we got shafted because we didn't get it. So we really need to be in the face of the community colleges and demand that we get an education center in our city for our kids. And it's just ridiculous that we haven't gotten it at this point. It has to be done. What we can do besides that as a city is make sure that we have, because schools are paid, when we're talking about the rest of the schools, it's all coming out of our property taxes. So we need to have a proper property tax base, which means enough housing and sufficient property taxes that can support a decent education for the kids in town. Thank you.
Thank you. And Caitlyn, we'll wrap up with you. Same question about the educational center.
Great. So my passion for youth is huge. My nonprofit I work for works with some of the most vulnerable children in our county, children in the child welfare system. And so I think youth is important, and education is important for opportunities for our youth. I would love to see the education center here. I would love to see more mentorship for our youth. I spoke with a superintendent and I asked him, as city council members or as leaders in our community, how much would it take just to come and have lunch with the kids at school, right? Pour some belief into them, let them know what their options are. How do we get our young adults involved? How do we foster this mentorship from a young age all the way up to young adults, where then they're wanting to be more involved in this community and benefiting and changing this community? I think we need to continue to build partnerships with the school as much as we can, with the school board, and be creative in ways to engage with them and to work with them. I think youth programs, that's a way that as city council, we can continue developing our youth programs outside of schools so that kids have something to do outside of the education system. So that's kind of, I think education is huge, and I think supporting our school district and taking a realistic look at it and being creative in our ideas and solutions are really important.
Thank you. And Caitlyn, we're going to stay with you actually for the next question. So let you go ahead and unmute again. So Caitlyn, the question is, recovering from COVID every city in the county has been impacted. Certainly Santa Paula has. What are your thoughts about how to recover from COVID? And as part of that, do you also see changes in the way that people move around? Do you have increased support for public transportation, walking, biking, yet keeping in mind the COVID issues? So try and take those two questions, share with us economic recovery from COVID and your views about public transportation and walking, biking.
Great. That's a great question. So this is a global pandemic like nothing that we've ever seen before, first off. So we are definitely not unique in this situation. We as a country as a whole are going through this right now. We as a state are going through this. We as a county are going through this. And we as a city are going through this. So I think what we can do as a city currently, we all know, sitting on Measure T, we had to reduce Measure T money this year because of the sales tax. We had to dip into reserves this year because we couldn't meet budget. So we have to take a real hard concern at what our income streams are as a city and what our projections are for those income streams, and be creative in new income streams. One way to help recover from COVID is I think the downtown project is a perfect example. The blocking off Davis, the restaurants being able to operate outside, seeing people cutting their hair outside, and continuing to partner with those businesses downtown, continuing to hear from the voice of the people, continuing to be creative and to push things through and to make change, I think is important. I think it's also important for transportation. That's a tough one because now we have to social distance. So I think transportation is really, really important. It always has been important. It's how people work. It's how people get places. And so I think we might need to add some additional transportation, some more times for transportation so that people can be social distance and can be healthy while traveling. So that's kind of a lot all in one question. Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie, same question. What's your thoughts about recovering from COVID as far as the city, and also your thoughts about public transportation, walking, biking, et cetera?
Okay. Absolutely an advocate for the more outdoor space that you can get and the more exercise that everybody can get, the better. So if we can encourage the outdoors for bicycling through our city, and I realize that takes, painting lines and making sure, but I would love to see some of that. I love watching Amgen go zooming through on all their bicycles through our city. It's a very special thing. I'm very concerned about our city and the world, but on a micro basis, our city, in recovering from COVID, the social toll that it's taken on all of us to learn to come together again as a society is we're getting into habits of separating ourselves from each other, and I worry about that as a person. And then in addition, I worry about the economic impact of this for people that may have been on the edge, may become homeless. And so we need to be ready to be helping those and be cognizant of those that may need some assistance to get them back on their feet. I worry about, because again, homeless, it's a very complicated issue because it is economic sometimes and it is mental health issues sometimes. So we need to be ready to assist people in both ways and not forget them. Thank you.
Thank you. Margot, your views about helping Santa Paula recover after COVID and your positions about public transport, walking and biking.
Yeah, this is something like we've never seen before. And like Caitlyn said, it's not a problem that's unique to Santa Paula. Our whole country, the whole world really is going to be dealing with the fallout from this. And we don't know how long it's going to last, truly. We've already lost a couple of businesses in town. And I think, as I've said about other things, I think that the best thing that we can do in our recovery efforts is to make sure that we are pouring resources into our families here in town. Because if our families are doing okay and they're surviving, then they will still be attending businesses and using those services. So we can't only focus on our businesses in town as far as recovery goes. I love downtown. I think that driving down around downtown, since they have now put this outdoor dining out, has completely changed the personality of downtown. It is so vibrant, it's so appealing, and I think that is something we should make permanent. I think we should also explore turning downtown into a pedestrian area only. We have several events throughout the year, like Cruise Night, where we already do that. It's incredibly successful. Everybody loves it. Everybody finds a way as far as parking or walking down. And I didn't save any time for biking or walking, but I absolutely think that's important. I think that bike lanes are something we should be including in our road improvement plans, and walking as well. So.
Thank you. Andy, your thoughts about helping Santa Paula recover from COVID, and your thoughts about public transport, walking, biking, etc.
First, well, I'm deeply grateful that we're going to be moving from purple to pink tomorrow, Tuesday. So that's going to allow a lot of our businesses of all types to step up. Hair cutters, nail salons, fitness centers. So I'm really happy that that's happening now. I am worried. We did have an impending eviction crisis that's been pushed out, but it's probably still going to happen sometime, and I'm deeply concerned about that. So we do need to make sure we have, we're tied in all to the assistance. Santa Paula has done very well with rental assistance and business assistance. We've been really trying to make sure everybody's tied into that. We are a small town, which is great. So we do see a lot of people who are on bikes and mobile and using our bike path. And we are a town that uses public transportation quite a bit. Even though the load on the buses has gone down, they're still used all the time. So we're still, making sure to get people moving around. And but we do, it's going to be a long time recovering. So we've got to make sure we're doing everything we can for everybody possible.
Thank you. Andy, I'm going to stay with you for the next question. There's several questions on this issue, and this issue comes up around the county because it's on everyone's mind because of events recently across the country, the Black Lives Matter movement, the issue of racial inequality, social justice. So Andy, the questions for you are, share with us your views about the police force, the impact of Black Lives Matter, defunding the police. What is your overall position about looking at these issues, supporting the police, protecting the community, and also racial equality?
Wow, that's quite a question packed with a lot of things. First, I do not favor defunding the police. We have 4 police officers on staff for each 12-hour period. That's quite small, so it makes it very difficult for them to respond to any kind of event, either violent or just helping out people at any given time. So we need adequate funding to have adequate staffing, and we got to make sure they're trained. We had our community forum the other day, and we learned some of the training they get, and a lot of people were impressed with the county training we have here, but a lot of people are also worried about how it was very few hours given each thing. So I am in favor of keeping our police department, but at the same time, I think we need to have deep conversations about what it is that they do, what it is that maybe they don't need to do, what human services are we not providing or not partnering well with the county. So we need to take a quick look, a solid look at how we can do both public safety and human services. So and wrap that into the budget that we have. So I don't think we've really ever had this conversation. I attended both our marches here, Fillmore and Ventura, and I think it's started a superb conversation that we got to keep going.
Thank you. Leslie, same question to you about Black Lives Matter movement. What kind of effect should that have on the police? What's your view on defunding? What's your thoughts about racial equality?
Let me first talk about racial equality. I have a diverse family, an extended family, and I live diversity. And I respect everyone equally, and I treat them all as equals. And I would encourage that in my city government, in my world. But I don't believe in defunding the police, and I believe that we need to work on our tax base so that we can actually fund them so that they can fill the open positions that they have, because it takes a year or 2 to even get those positions up to speed, and make sure that we have a well-funded police force. I'm horribly distressed at the movement that is treating them with the lack of respect, and they deserve the respect. They dedicate their careers to keep us safe. And I very appalled, and I speak for many people that I've meet in our city that are so worried about our police and how demoralized they should be by being under the attack for maybe the actions of people in other states, other cities, and which they did not do. And so I fully support our police, and I fully support finding ways to better equip and better train them so they can serve us even better. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlyn. Same question to you about Black Lives Matter funding and the police and racial equality.
Thank you. You know, our police in this community do their job with less. They are paid 20% less here than anywhere else in the county. I personally went and did a ride along with our local PD. I toured the location. I spent, I don't know, 6 to 8 hours with them on shift, really going down and seeing the homeless problem firsthand, seeing the graffiti problem, just getting to know them on a one-on-one basis a little bit better. And they do a lot on a budget here. And I would actually like to see like a homeless liaison officer in our town. I would love to see them push, partnered with social services. I would love to see increased social services in our community. On the BLM movement, I do think every voice matters in this community, and that hurts need to be heard. And I just think it's a separate issue than defund the police. I think it's a separate approach. I think it's a separate healing and unifying. And I think anything that we do as a city moving forward needs to unify us and not divide us. And I think we do need additional social services. That's why I'm bringing a social service coalition to this town. I had a great conversation with Ventura Behavioral Health. We're going to start doing mental health services in our park during COVID, because this is a really challenging time. And how do we unify and come together and be strategic and creative in building this community and seeing it thrive? Thank you.
You're welcome. Margot, let's wrap up with you on your thoughts about defunding the police, racial equality.
Well, I would just want to say that issues of racial equality are included in every single issue we've talked about tonight. They're included in COVID recovery, housing, economics. All of these things impact people of color more than they impact white people. I also want to say that defunding the police and racial equality are not about personal biases. These are systemic problems. So I don't doubt that everybody on this panel has had great experiences with our police here. We are exactly the people who the police system is meant to defend and protect. So I'm not going to sit here and say that what my experience is the experience. It is not. And we're hearing this loud and clear this whole summer. And if we're not willing to listen, then we're not allowed to say that we're for racial justice, because people have been crying out for over 400 years, and we're just now starting to talk about it. I think that a lot of the social services that we all want to see in our town, they cost money. And we choose to spend money in one way that, again, serves a very specific part of our population, instead of investing in our community, which is a community of color. We are 80% Latinx here in Santa Paula. So this system disproportionately negatively affects people of color, and we need to start listening. We need to start taking that money that we spend, which is almost $10 million, and start investing back into our community, which will increase public safety. I'll say it in another time.
Thank you. And Margot, we're going to start with you on the next question. So let's talk a little bit about your visions for the future. I mean, are there certain things that you think Santa Paula should do to bring it into the future? And sort of separate from that, but similar, is do you have any ideas about how to bring all of the people to be heard on the council? So what would you do to make sure that everyone is heard on the council? What will you do to bring Santa Paula into the future?
Yeah, well, this is perfect for me to finish my last point. In the police forum that happened last week, the city manager said that we hired 7 new officers in the last couple years, and yet the chief mentioned that crime has gone up. So that right there is proof that more police do not equal more public safety. I think this is one way that we can move into the future. It is time for us to have an imagination and to get creative with public safety that, again, serves everyone, that doesn't just serve property owners and white or white passing people. We need to really include everybody. I think that part of the reason why some people don't feel included is because it feels dangerous. It feels scary to come and speak to power, whether that's the city council, the police department, whatever it is. So we need to make sure that we are outwardly making efforts to include people of color, Spanish-speaking people, immigrants in our community, because these are the residents that we represent. A lot of times we only hear from, again, a very specific part of the population. We need to go out and talk to people and make sure that they know that they're protected, that they're our priority, that they are the people that we serve, no matter who they are, no matter their economic level, no matter if they speak English, no matter if they are immigrants. All of that is welcome here in Santa Paula. That is what makes us so beautiful and so great. And I think that the more that we celebrate that and prioritize the protection of that, the better Santa Paula will be.
Thank you. Caitlyn, same question to you. Your thoughts about bringing Santa Paula into the future, and also about making sure that all voices are heard on the council.
Great. So there's so much potential where we live. We're the corridor for the 126 from Piru all the way to Ventura. We have people that visit Ojai on the weekends. This is a given. We have bikes and motorcyclists that come through here. And so economically, I think that's an easy thing. I think the true future of Santa Paula, though, is our youth. I think we need more leadership programs in this community. I think we need more mentorship programs in this community. I think we need more volunteer programs for our youth, additional youth programming such as PAL the police force. Let's bridge the gap between the police and the children and humanize them a little bit. I think we also we started a City Corps program. That's a fantastic program in Oxnard that's an at-risk for at-risk youth, and even has a Job Corps program, right? So that has additional training. So I think our future is our youth first and foremost. And I think that's really where the focus needs to be. And so yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Andy, same question to you. What are your thoughts about bringing Santa Paula into the future, and how will you make sure that all people's voices are heard on the council?
Well, we want to make sure we bring everybody along, that's for sure. So everybody shared some really good points on how we need to do that. As I said, we have the first gigamic community here, but COVID has been working with the school district, and COVID has shown how many households here do not have either computers and or internet. So if we're going to become a part of a society that depends a little bit more on those connections, we're going to have to make sure that everybody participates in that. Another thing the city's done is they've just started up a volunteer program that's more intentional. October 17th is going to be a big city-wide cleanup event. And I think volunteerism sounds kind of nice, but the more people we get in relationship with each other, the more we become one community and not these separate communities. One of my campaign promises a few years ago was civic participation. I've been trying to reach out to a lot of different people to make sure they think about running for our commissions or for city council in the future. We've talked about business. I think getting a humming business community here, manufacturing community, and maybe some kind of one business that attracts a lot of business is important. I try to spend as much time as I can in the community porque hablo español y es la comunidad en que quiero mucho, entonces ahí participo mucho con esa comunidad. Gracias.
Thank you. And Leslie, we'll wrap up with you. What do you think can be done to bring Santa Paula into the future, and how would you make sure all voices are heard?
Well, first of all, making all voices heard, I can communicate with everyone. This past Saturday, I was at my office and people came in to talk to me specifically about the campaign. And I'm proud to say that everyone who came in to talk to me was Hispanic background. And I had a long conversation with one woman who's extremely concerned about the sewer rates. And we had the conversation in Spanish, talking about drenaje and the high cost and why our bills are going up so high on sewer. And I would like to follow up with some research on that, because it appears that we should be able to change our sewer rates to a model that would be similar to Ventura, the city of Ventura, which models its charges on winter rates as opposed to summer rates. We charge whatever water goes through, whether it goes through water treatment or not. And a lot of the water, especially in the summertime, goes into landscaping. So if we were to base our sewer rates on the winter usage, then we would have a more equitable amount that we would be charging our residents, particularly those that are low income and seniors on fixed income are really being beaten up with this. So I was proud to have that conversation and explain that issue in Spanish, and that's how I would draw people in.
Thank you. Andy, we're going to probably this will be our last question. I'm starting with you first. So there's some comments about there's too much building in Santa Paula. It's sort of destroying the character of the city. How will you stop building? But then on the other hand, Santa Paula is an older city. How do you balance historic buildings with the community's demands for new buildings and modern architecture? So share with us your perspectives, how you handle those two competing perspectives.
Yeah, that's a great question. So as was mentioned before, we do need to grow a little bit. We're a fairly poor city. One of the interesting fact about Santa Paula is that most cities turn over their housing stock every 20 to 30 years. We turn over our housing stock every 70 to 80 years because people stay here forever, their children stay here. So that's beautiful, but it does keep our property tax base low. So having the new development, most in East Area 1, which will build out to 1,500 homes, will help us in some way, but that divide is a deep concern. We're making sure that the bridge gets built so there's a better commute on Santa Paula Street. I'm hoping we have a trolley to get people in here, and then we got to make sure that that park gets built so that the rest of us get to go use that park. But that divide is real. And I forgot the second part of the question. I'm sorry, David.
Just how you would look at some of the historic buildings, preserving them, but also is there too much destruction happening right now?
Well, yeah, we do have a preservation of historic buildings, and I do not want downtown to change so that it loses its beautiful identity it has now. You know, stores like the Vaquero Huero are great things, and we got to keep that. So we need to keep the Santa Paula identity while growing at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. Margot, same question to you. Some people feel too much building is happening. You're losing the character of Santa Paula. Others feel it's time to move past some of the historic structures. How would you deal with those competing desires?
Well, I think that there's kind of two parts to that. And as far as housing goes, I think that we need to develop housing, affordable housing. And that's likely, since we're pretty built out, that's going to be infill development. That's going to be just increasing some density in some areas. So I think that we have to do. We have to do that for our community. As far as commercial buildings, I think that we can push people to renovate and restore those instead. And I personally think that this is, a personal opinion. Some people like new and modern, and some people like the historic charm. I love the historic charm, and I also like the modern. I think the best cities are the ones that blend the two together. So I hope that we see some development, behind our downtown that's been talked about, and the restoration of our historic buildings and houses. But I think we need to be careful about that. Currently, one of the marks for becoming a historical house, if you want to, is being 50 years old. I don't think a house that was built in 1970 should be considered a historic home. So I do think that we need to preserve the ones that are truly historic on a few different marks. And I think that we need to be open to development if it's serving the needs of our community.
Thank you. Leslie, share with us your philosophy about dealing with some who feel that too much growth is happening, we're losing the character, and those who feel that there's some historic buildings that should not be preserved and moved on.
It's a balancing act, honestly, because we want to preserve our historic buildings. Our city has such a lovely history with names that go back to the beginning, and we don't want to lose that. And we don't want to lose the small town feel that we have. We are challenged with our, it was under 5 square miles. Now it's a little bigger with the East area, but we don't have much acreage that we can do that. So some infill is probably necessary, but I'm very worried about parking, and I'm worried about the issues that are going to happen, the collateral issues that come with that. So I'm worried that the city is now talking about just kind of advising people in the immediate area of making the turning commercial into residential. And I think it needs to be examined more carefully as to the consequences for the neighbors on that. I am in favor of finding ways to do that, but we should never forget the people that already are trying to live here and not make it more difficult as quality of life with too much parking and particularly that, but the other consequences of the infill and the density. You know, I lived in a city. I love the city myself. I'm fine with that. I don't mind. I don't need my big space, but part of the charm of our city is some of that space, and we can't let all of that go.
Thank you. Caitlyn, we'll wrap up this question with you.
Great. So I'm a third generation resident of Santa Paula. I've grown up here my whole life. I remember, you know, being on Main Street from the time I can remember and just participating in the things that make Santa Paula and why we love this community. And so I definitely love the small town charm. I definitely love that everyone knows everyone. I definitely love the great characteristics to this community, but we do need to grow, and we do need to grow smartly. And I'm not saying that we don't need to be strategic. We live in the most beautiful location, and it's so diverse with the agriculture and the mountains and everything else we have to offer. But we are in economically challenging times, and so growing smartly is something we have to look at. We have to look at being creative with housing. We have to look at being creative with our businesses and our strategies, and we have to look at creative at you know, turning commercial into residential and what infill looks like, and how do we support those businesses and make change and make smart change and listen to the community. Not, you know, I think we definitely need the community buy-in in all of these areas and to listen and to represent the residents. So I do love the small town charm, but I do think we do need to grow a little bit.
Okay, candidates, thank you very much. We're going to move now to our closing statements. We'll do them in the reverse order from the beginning. First up will be Leslie Cornell. Get you to unmute there, Leslie, and then we'll start.
There we go, sorry. All right, and thanks again to League of Women Voters of the Chamber and for your time, David, tonight to put this on for us and get our messages out to the voters. Having owned a local small business in Santa Paula for so many years, service-oriented business, I know service. I've been on multiple boards. I'm on the fair board. I've been on the bank board. I understand finance. I understand budgets. But I bring to that experience, that corporate governance ability, but also being in tune with the service with the local people. And I do believe that a city exists to serve its people, and that we should do all we can to make our city better at serving all of our needs. And that's what I would bring to that, bring to our city. And I believe I have the skill set and the experience that would be successful in helping move our city forward. Thanks again.
Thank you. Our next candidate, Andy Sobel, as far as unmute, and we'll get you started.
Also, thank you, David. Thank you, Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters. I always appreciate these nights. Santa Paula is a vibrant, dynamic city, and it, as I said, really unique. The citizens are an amazing group of people. So we've got so many social and civic groups. Parks are well used. We've got the great theater. We have things like the Citizen Corps America in Bloom, Latino Town Hall, and the Niño de Atocha comes here, which is a world event. And I call us the Smithsonian of the West because I'm pretty sure we have more museums per population than anywhere else. So you've got to keep working together, public and the private. And I take being a member of the City Council very seriously. And I think I've lived up to my promises before, but I behave with integrity, no backroom deals. You'll know where I stand, and you'll see it on the dais when we have discussions. I'll do my utmost to get the community, the whole community, involved in City Council conversations. And I'm available to you anytime. I love being stopped all over the place. I love being called. I love being challenged. And finally, I have no agenda, so I just want to be a good public service. So please get involved, and I'd be honored to have your vote. Entonces, por favor, participe y me sentiría honrado de contar con su voto. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next candidate is Caitlyn Behringer.
Yes, I want to say thank you to all who hosted the Chamber of Commerce, League of Women's Voters, to David. I also want to say thank you to those taking the time to listen tonight and to hear the issues and to, care about this city. In today's unprecedented times, the people of Santa Paula are recovering together. The future belongs to the strong, and I am confident that the community will not only survive, but thrive. In closing, I want the residents of Santa Paula to be assured that as a council member, I will use my current relationships, foster new relationships, and bring awareness and positive change to our amazing community. I promise to bridge the gap between the city and the residents I represent. I promise to make sure all residents have a voice and a seat at the table. I promise to serve with ethics and integrity, and to serve with honesty and transparency. I promise to be available and accessible to the community, and I promise to use all my talents and strengths to meet the needs of Santa Paula. My grandfather, Carl Behringer, believed that the challenges that faced Santa Paula were neither impossible to solve or unique. He believed our quality of life reflected the fact that all residents here love Santa Paula enough to involve themselves in local government. Like my grandfather, I agree. Santa Paula is a great place to live. I believe in each and every voice matters in this community, and that the time is right for me to serve on City Council. I believe in my duty to foster the next generation and to inspire hope and success. Above all, I appreciate our history with a vision for our future. Thank you for this evening.
Thank you. And our next candidate is Margot Bangs.
Thank you, everybody who put this on, everybody who's watching, all the other candidates for sharing your perspectives. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to even have a voice in this town. And I want to help others get their voice heard as well. I think that we have a lot of big hurdles to overcome here in Santa Paula. And the best thing that we can do is be innovative, be creative, and think outside of the box. I'm willing to do that. I am not interested in maintaining the status quo at all. I want to see systems that support everyone, that uplift everyone, and that protect everyone. And if you want that as well, then I am the candidate for you. So I'm asking you to vote for me, not because I have all of the city experience or because you know me, because I'm probably the least connected person on this panel, but because I care deeply about our community. I care the most about people who are vulnerable in our community, and I want them to be thriving. I don't want to serve interests that are mine or people just like me. I want to help every single person in our community, and I think that when we uplift people who are most vulnerable, it really does serve everyone. So again, I'm asking you to vote for me for City Council. If you want to have a bold vision, be creative, and see a new future for Santa Paula.
There we go. Thank you to all the candidates. It's unfortunate that we don't have an audience to give you a well-deserved round of applause. Before we wrap up, though, I want to remind viewers you're voting for 2 candidates in this election. And I have a short little program here from the League of Women Voters to share with you, if we can get this to work. So we want to remind you about planning your vote. You have multiple ways to vote this year. Every registered voter will get a mail-in ballot. You can return that through the Postal Service or to a ballot box, or even return it to a polling place when those open up. Visit ventura.org for more information. When you think about voting, most voters have already started to receive their mail-in ballots. There are drop boxes that are opening up tomorrow where you can actually return your ballots that early. If you don't get a ballot by October 16th, though, please contact the Elections Division because you should have it by then. We also want to remind all voters that October 20th is a good target date to get your ballot into the mail if that's how you plan to return it. That'll make sure that your ballot will be arriving by the Elections Department on November 3rd. It's important also to know that any ballot postmarked by November 3rd will still be counted if it's received by November 17th. But if you use a ballot, a mail-in ballot, make sure you sign the outside envelope. It's important that you put your signature on those ballots. There's other great resources for you. Where's my ballot.sos.ca.gov. You can just fill in your name and a few pieces of information, and it'll let you know where your ballot is. Has it been delivered to the post office? Has it been received by the Elections Department? votersedge.org is another great resource. Put in your address. You can find all the candidates, ballot propositions, etc. that apply to you. Of course, visit lwvventuracounty.org, the same place where you registered to watch tonight. You can actually go back and view videos of this forum or any other forum. We'll post this video within about 24 hours. With that, I'd like to thank the volunteers at the League, Pat Essick, who oversees voter services, Betsy, you met earlier, Cheryl, Maddie, and Ruby have all been great help tonight. Thank you to all. I'm David Marin, and with that, thank you and good night. Don't forget to vote.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.